This video will serve as a handy roundup of a number of different aspects related to the cover-up regarding the Southport murders. And if you enjoy the video, please give it a share and help spread the truth. Now let's get into it. Number 1. Axel Rudakabana. The first aspect of the cover-up regarding the Southport murders is obviously the media's portrayal of the killer himself, Axel Rudakabana. In the immediate aftermath of the murders, the media dug out 2 images of the killer. One was of him as a little boy, dressed up smartly in his school uniform, and the other was him dressed up as Doctor Who. This was done deliberately, and this misinformation was maintained for months, until he went on trial in fact, when eventually the police released his mugshot. Most likely because the courtroom sketches were so obviously different from the pictures we had been shown that pressure was mounting for the truth to come out. I am positive that there would have been more up-to-date images of him available, but these were obviously quickly suppressed, and his social media accounts were scrubbed by the security services between the time of his arrest and the time his name was revealed. And anyway, even if there weren't images on social media, the police did have his mugshot. But it wasn't just Rudakabana's image that was selectively chosen. The media's initial coverage of him read more like a glowing school report than a write-up on a triple killer who had just carried out one of Britain's most brutal spree killings. Newspapers gushed, describing him as a quiet and shy Welsh choir boy, even going as far as to inform the public that those who walked past his home would often stop to hear him singing from his bedroom. And it didn't end there. The media was also quick to point out that he was a huge Doctor Who fan, and that he had once told people that he wanted to be the first black Doctor Who, because obviously he's a quintessentially British boy. The truth of the matter, his real image, and his real, more up-to-date pastimes would soon emerge. Number 2. The Islamic link. Soon after the stabbings, stories and social media posts began to circulate stating that the stabbings were an act of Islamic terrorism and that Rudakabana was motivated by his exposure to militant Islam. This was quickly branded as disinformation, and the media and the government went into overdrive to point out how this was simply untrue. The drive to disprove this theory went to such lengths that people were actually arrested and some were jailed for posting about it on social media. It then came as somewhat of a shock to the public when it was finally revealed that Rudakabana was in possession of at least one Islamic terrorist manual, and had in fact been ordering a number of different items online as he was attempting to manufacture ricin, presumably because his first idea was to use the deadly substance in a planned terror attack. Due to the government's involvement in withholding the truth on this matter, and taking into account that senior ministers and the Prime Minister were involved in the fast-tracking of criminal trials for those who had claimed Rudakabana had been influenced by Islamic material, when those ministers and the Prime Minister were well aware of the fact that Rudakabana was in possession of Islamic terror documents, the case could be made that Starmer and others should face criminal action for perverting the course of justice. Interestingly, after his trial had concluded, the police then said it could take years for his internet history to be recovered. I mean, who am I to doubt the words of the police? But it seems a little fishy to me that with all the resources available to the police and the security services, that they couldn't have his whole browsing history catalogued and annotated within an afternoon. Number 3. The police turned a blind eye. The police lacking any information on Rudakabana, and apparently not being able to track his internet browsing history, seems odd. But after a little investigation, this was proved to be yet another lie. The police knew exactly who he was, as did the security services, and they had all the information they needed to act long before he committed the brutal murders in Southport. In fact, by the time he carried out the murders of the 3 young girls, he was well known to police, anti-extremism authorities, and to a number of other agencies. From the age of just 13, he had been flagged up as a problem child, and was later permanently expelled from school after he brought a knife into class on no less than 10 occasions. When pressed by staff as to why he had carried a knife, he said to use it. 2 months after his expulsion, he reappeared at the school carrying a hockey stick, which he used to attack another child, leading to members of staff having to physically restrain him. It is not clear if he was arrested for this. However, after bringing knives into school and later assaulting a child, he was eventually convicted of 3 criminal offences, including assault and carrying a knife. And from that point, things got worse. He spoke openly about wishing to carry out a mass shooting, regularly searched extremist material online, and obsessed over the 2017 London Bridge terror attack. All of this was reported to authorities, yet nothing was done. But in the aftermath of the Southport murders, this was all kept from the public, and again, those who raised concerns regarding his upbringing were accused of spreading disinformation. Number 4. The severity of the attack. The police and the media didn't just cover up his past, his links to Islamic terrorism, and his real identity. They also covered up the severity of the attack. We all know that 3 little girls were stabbed to death during a spree killing at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class. That is bad enough, but shockingly, it doesn't come close to the true horror of what Axel Ruda-Cabana inflicted on those little girls. One of the girls who died was stabbed 122 times. Another of the victims who died was stabbed 85 times, and one of the survivors, who miraculously recovered, suffered no less than 32 stab wounds. This crime was one of the most brutal spree killings in British history, and the way Ruda-Cabana furiously and relentlessly attacked his victims shared many similarities with crimes that have a sexual or emotional motivation. Number 5. The Amazon diversion. But the final insult was yet to come, bearing in mind that there had clearly been a huge cover-up, that information was withheld from the public, that people had been jailed for disinformation, when in fact they had been telling the truth, and that the security services, the police, and local authorities had known of Ruda-Cabana's obsessions with terrorism and repeated involvement with knife crime, yet did nothing to stop him, you would think Keir Starmer and the government would have a lot of apologising and a fair bit of explaining to do. Well, if you thought that, you would be wrong. When Starmer finally did address the nation about Ruda-Cabana, it was not to call for an inquiry into how multiple schools, social services, the police, the local authority, the security services, children's social care, Prevent, the CPS, and the judiciary had all failed to control the young killer and prevent him going on a rampage. When Starmer did finally convene a press conference, it was to call for new legislation to be fast-tracked in order to ensure knives cannot be purchased from Amazon and other online retailers without more stringent security checks, because the big issue, according to the establishment, is the control of bladed articles, rather than the fact that multiple agencies all failed to correctly deal with a well-known ticking time bomb who had a long history of obsessing over terrorism and attacking people with knives. Conclusion. Striking parallels can be seen between the case of the Southport murders and the grooming scandal. Yet again we have a male of ethnic minority descent carrying out the most heinous crime against white girls, and the state and the media have colluded to both cover up the true nature of the incident as well as divert attention away from the real causes. What's more, just as in the case of the grooming scandal, the police have arrested and attempted to silence those seeking the truth. Now, I am not a betting man, but if I was, I would wager that the real reason Axel Ruda-Cabana was given so many chances by multiple organs of the state, and why schools, social services, Prevent, and many other bodies allowed him to walk free, ultimately allowing him to carry out the attack in Southport, is because of his ethnicity. When young white men are jailed for merely owning a copy of a book that is available for purchase at any high street retailer, but a young black man is allowed to bring a knife into school, repeatedly search out terrorist material, turn his bedroom into a makeshift ricin factory, and even commit knife attacks, yet can walk free and go unmonitored, the term two-tier justice is clearly not just a meme or a conspiracy theory. Yet incredibly, that very term, two-tier justice, has just been branded by the Home Office as far-right extremism, which really tells you everything you need to know about the establishment's priorities.